Have you ever heard whispers about human bones found hidden inside the walls of castles, monasteries, or grand manor houses? For centuries, such discoveries baffled historians until the awful truth emerged. These weren't accidents. These were echoes of an ancient punishment, so cruel that it erased its victims from the world without shedding a drop of blood. It's called immurement, a death sentence where the victim is sealed away alive. Tonight, we'll travel across centuries and continents to uncover history's most grotesque punishments, from bricking people into walls, to boiling them alive, to blasting them from cannons. And along the way, we'll meet the rulers, rebels, and ordinary people who found themselves on the wrong side of history's darkest laws. Immurment's earliest recorded form traces back to ancient Rome and the Vestal Virgins. These priestesses of the goddess Vesta swore lifelong vows of celibacy. Breaking that vow wasn't just scandalous, it was considered a cosmic crime that could anger the gods and doom the city. Roman law forbade burying a living person within the city walls. But the solution was as coldly legalistic, it was horrific. A condemned Vestal was placed in a small underground chamber with a lamp, a little food, and a little water. Technically, they weren't buried. The state could claim innocence. But everyone knew she would slowly starve in pitch darkness. Centuries later, immurement took on darker forms in medieval Europe. The Christian Church sometimes used it to punish monks or nuns who broke their vows, or to silence heretics without the mess of bloodshed. Victims might be bricked into the walls of fortresses, placed in sealed wooden boxes, or lowered into dungeon cells where the only exit was sealed with fresh masonry. From that moment, there was no escape, only the slow progression of hunger, thirst, and despair in total darkness. Even more cruel were social immurements, cells built near banquet halls, so the prisoner could hear feasts and laughter while wasting away. Sometimes, waste from the castle's cesspits was dumped on them. A person could spend weeks in this living grave before death finally claimed them. We've all seen meat or pasta boil in a pot. Now imagine, instead of dinner, it's a human being in that water, while boiling alive was practiced in various cultures. From Japan to Russia to Egypt, it became notorious in 16th century England under King Henry VIII. Henry wasn't known for his mercy. He broke with the Catholic Church, made himself head of the Church of England, and rewrote God's law to suit his own needs. He executed 2 of his own wives and tens of thousands of subjects. In 1531, Henry passed a chilling decree: poisoners were to be boiled alive. The very first to suffer this fate was Richard Roos, the cook of Bishop John Fisher. Accused of poisoning a meal that killed 2 guests, Roos claimed it was only a prank, laxatives, he said. The court didn't believe him. Executioners didn't simply drop him into boiling water to die quickly. They lowered him in, pulled him out, lowered him again, prolonging the agony as spectators fainted at his screams. This wasn't just punishment, it was theatre. The boiling cauldron became a public warning: betray the king, and you'll die screaming before all of London. The image of a human cannibal might make you think of circus stunts. But the original inspiration was far from entertaining. In the 16th century, Portuguese colonizers in Asia and South America devised a punishment for rebels, strapping them to the muzzle of a cannon and firing. But it was during the Indian Rebellion of 1857 that this method gained its most infamous association with the British Army. Mutineers and rebels were tied directly to artillery pieces and blasted apart before assembled soldiers and civilians. Often, they used grape shot or blanks, but sometimes a solid cannonball. The explosion shredded the victim instantly, scattering remains over hundreds of meters. In one infamous incident, a mix-up meant some cannons were loaded with live shot. Spectators and soldiers alike were struck by flying bone fragments. The Ottoman Turks had an even more shocking variation. In 1596, a prisoner in Istanbul was literally placed inside a cannon and fired. There are also records of tying people to rockets and launching them into the air, a grim precursor to fireworks. Of all the ways to die, starvation in complete darkness might be the most psychologically devastating. Medieval lords sometimes used castle wells, underground vaults, or custom-built oubliettes, forgetting places, to hold prisoners in solitary confinement until death. No light, no contact, no food. The only sounds might be distant laughter from the great hall above. Some cells were reused over decades, layered with the bones of previous occupants. Others doubled as cesspits, drowning the condemned in filth before hunger could finish them. Occasionally, scraps from the Lord's table would be tossed down, not as mercy, but as mockery. Hanging was a universal punishment, but in the Middle Ages, it wasn't always quick. In Germany, the Netherlands, England, and beyond, some criminals were placed in iron cages shaped like human bodies. They could be suspended 4 days, left to die from thirst, or, in the worst cases, left 4 years, their skeletons swaying in the wind as a grim warning. Sometimes, the condemned were burned with hot irons or stoned while hanging. Pirates, traitors, and murderers all met this fate. One murderer's body reportedly hung for 20 years, rusting in its metal frame, until storms finally broke it down. The last recorded use of this execution method was in 1921 Afghanistan, captured by photographers for National Geographic. Throughout history, execution has often been less about justice and more about making a public statement, whether by sealing someone into a wall, boiling them alive, blasting them from a cannon, or leaving them to rot in a cage. The message was always the same: defy power and suffer beyond imagination. It's easy to see these as relics of a barbaric past, but they also force us to ask, how far would people go today if law and culture allowed it? Which of these punishments strikes you as the most horrifying? And do you think any of them could ever be just in their time? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting videos. History is full of stories like these, and some are even darker.